All right, guys, here is the gear. We have some cool things I'm anticipating trying. Uh, Three of them, kind of. The soap, the brush, and the combo of the blade and razor. And each of them is a little bit special. The brush here is the Semogue handle Owners Club. And it is a boar brush, as you can tell. And this is the one that I've been using that hair dryer break-in technique, break-in accelerator on. And I've seen a lot of split tips become created during that process. I did that dryer treatment 10 times since I have last used this brush to shave. So I'm excited to see if I can tell any difference. Visually, I can tell a difference in the tips. I hope that it feels different to my face. So we're looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the soap because this is the Mutton Tallow from Stirling. I don't believe I've tried Glastonbury yet, and looking forward to that. This is a brand new puck. I realized that Stirling is having to think about their mutton tallow base because those ingredients are getting a little more expensive. The mutton tallow, and it's a slicker, creamier base than even their beef tallow, and it is a wonderful value, but just a top notch. I mean, this to me, this base can compete with any base out there, even a base costing three times as much. It can do it easily, in my opinion. And scent is a neat one, kind of patchouli and all those types of ingredients. And so I'm looking forward to trying that guy for the first time. I don't think I've sampled that one before, but since the future of the mutton tallow has a question mark. If the costs continue to rise, then he's going to have to change something. Um, then I definitely wanted to pick it up before it got gone. Right now, what I'm looking forward to here is if you watched yesterday's shave, then the Pella that I've used. I've had it for a couple of years now. I haven't used it too many times. I think it was like the fifth use yesterday. I put it in this razor with the medium base plate. They call it at Supply, they call that the comfortable base plate. The one that's more mild than the comfortable base plate, they call the, I think, sensitive base plate. And then I think ultra close might be the one that they call the higher aggression of the base plate. So they have different names for those base plates. And we're going to perhaps switch to a different base plate if the brand new Pella blade, not the same one I used yesterday, because that one gave me tugginess, even with just 5 uses on it, or 4 at the start of the shave. It only had 4 uses on it. It's still tugginess, and it did not have a very close result at all. I had to switch that blade into another razor. I believe this is an E-type from Schick, and it took care of it. It took 3 passes to do it, but it did. And so that means that this razor obviously has some type of geometrical difference that is important for the Pella blade of that age. Now, Pella is the bulk packaging way that they're naming the Personna injector blades. And the Personna and Pella blade is on one side, and the other popular blade is the Chinese Schicks in terms of modern injector blades that you can get. These are the two most popular ones. I'll move that so you can see the word. There are vintage Schicks that are available, but of course those are a lot harder to find and more expensive. These more modern Schicks, and here's the thing, I used this in my first uses with the Supply, and they did wonderfully well. So if there aren't too many other blades out there, at least these guys work really well. And the Pellas work well with the older Gillettes, at least in my experience so far. And the Pella Personas, we are going to put that today, a brand new Pella Persona blade, in the razor I started out with yesterday. And we'll see if it can handle it okay. 1 day's worth of growth here, so that's normal. But instead of switching to, if things go badly, instead of switching to the E-type to resurrect the shave, I'm going to switch the base plate. I'm going to switch to the more aggressive base plate, see if that makes a difference. Maybe the Pella Personna blades, for my skin at least, don't quite agree with the middle of the road base plate. So that is the fun we're going to have today. So let's start off. We do not have a blade in this razor. Let's start off by injecting it. And Michael Friedberg, we did a live shave with him the first time I used this razor. He was wanting to watch me and to see how the injecting process went, because there's something about the alignment to where it's not perfect and you have to fiddle with it just a little bit. Not really a lot, but it's not as smooth and natural as it is with the vintage pieces. So let's just try it and see what it goes. You can tell that there's not really an opening over here, and there is one over here. And so this is obviously the one you're going to go in. And it's easy to know whether you should go this way or this way because of this indentation right here has to fit in that little slot right there. And so it won't go opposite. But if you also look, then we see the blade has to travel, and so you can just see the travel path and know that that's the right way to go anyway. All right, so we're going to slide back to then have the next blade in line jump up into the top position, and then it moved in very smoothly. Very nice. I basically loosened up the base plate as much as it would go and still had the threading engaged there, and that's all it took. Easy peasy. So this is the Pella / Personna injector blade. When you buy them from Maggard Razors, they are called they use the Pella configuration, the name. So we'll just tighten up, and this is a spring-loaded nut to make sure it doesn't work its way out, during the shaving process. And I, of course, have never had that happen. Okay, I'm gonna get my face wet. One of the reasons that Rod has so few scents that are in his Mutton Tallow base, even though it's a higher performance base, pretty much everybody agrees about that, is because the Mutton Tallow base itself has an intrinsic funk to it. And so it only works with stronger scents or scents that work in nice cooperation with that kind of sense of funk. And this is a kind of a strong scent, even when I open it up and it's 3.5 feet away from my nose, it manages to come up and greet my nose. And but in a way, it's not a strong scent. It's very natural and earthy and herby and that kind of thing. It's definitely not something that punches you around. I find it pleasant and enjoyable. And in fact, that patchouli is an ingredient that is in so many shaving products as an accent ingredient, and sometimes as something a little bit more dominant. I like very often what it does to a scent's profile. All right, face is wet. Let's take this wet brush, shake a lot of the water out of it. Another experiment that I want to do, a little series with you guys, is using less water in my brush, giving it a squeeze. I never do that because I like to have a little bit of water in there. But I might start doing more of a drier load where it's just a really lightly wet brush. Just maybe I might call it a damp brush. I'll figure out some kind of terminology and see if it makes a difference in my lathers. I think it might make a difference in terms of how much lather is spilling over the soap tub. We'll see if it has any other differences. So I'm thinking about bringing that to you guys. All right, so let's do 30 seconds. And 50 rolled around right there. This is the size tub. That's the 6 ounce. And so it'll contain usually about 5.8 ounces of Stirling soap. And that's enough to last me about 13 months of shaves. So that's 20 seconds. Just a few more. And just light pressure is what I used. And surely that will be enough. It doesn't look like a ton on the brush. You can see, though, kind of what was developing on the side of the tub there. I bet it will be enough. Visually, as I have been inspecting this brush for the tips, it looks like I have commonly seen brush tips with 4 splits, sometimes 5, easily a good many with 3, that sort of thing. and I think that's good news. I think if I'm going to have a problem with the break-in method of hair dryer, if it's too aggressive and the fear is that it might split the brush in a way where the splits aren't stable, then I think, and that's not what I want to have happen. I think if I keep observing lots of tips that have a good many splits, I think that's a good sign. This almost feels like it's got some vetiver in there too. All right, are you guys at a tilt where you can see? I think so. Can I tilt you down? I don't know if I can. There we go. Got a new mount, and it's not quite as flexible as the other one in terms of panning down and around. I have to pause you and unloose a little screw, that kind of thing. I still feel some backbone that this brush has kind of at the core of the knot there. So in case you haven't been following my channel and or saw, I did a separate video where I showed you guys the hairdryer technique. You can just look for the thumbnail that has a hairdryer and this brush in the thumbnail, and so it'll be easy to spot that video. Just to summarize it, I would soak the brush for half an hour to an hour, so something like that. You get it really kind of soggy. And then I would dry it a little bit to get a lot of the excess water out on a towel, or usually just a towel. And then so I'm dealing with just a wet brush, and so then I start hair drying at the knot, kind of with a tilt to it, so it's kind of across the tips, but also kind of going into the center of the knot as well. Generally I used high speed and just warm temperature. I did not use hot temperature. Tried to have kind of a mild approach to this potentially destructive break-in accelerator. If you're brand new, then what a break-in means to a boar brush is the knot will open up, the tips will split, get those tips to split, and it becomes a much softer knot. Some argue that sometimes you can get them softer than a badger brush. And since there are some pure badger brushes and kind of some best badger brushes that don't really get super soft, I think that's an accurate statement. However, I don't think it's ever going to be as soft as some of the silver tips and some of the jelly 2-bands that I've seen around. And just gradually blow dry it, and then unclump the hairs as they get drier and drier. And that's basically it. And then once they kind of get dry, the core of the knot still has, in my break-in accelerator process, the core there will still have some dampness to it. I'm not trying to dry the whole knot, focusing on the tips. And that's it. That's what I call a treatment. So this one had 10 of those treatments since the last time I used this brush. If I had a really woody Whiskey Woods, that is a splash from Clubman that might really work with this kind of patchouli-based, very earthy scent as an aftershave product to complement this scent. That could really work well. If I had a sandalwood balm or splash that was very woody, I bet that kind of a thing would work really well with this. Oh, that's right. I think I threw it away because I believe I finally used up that sandalwood balm from Lather and Wood. I bought that early in my shaving days from Amazon. That was back before I knew about buying used gear. Amazon was my only source of shaving information, the comments in Amazon. And that's where I bought all my shaving products. And I finally used up that balm. And that was I enjoyed it. That was a good little sandalwood balm. It had a nice authentic scent, and it performed well enough for me. Well, I think that we have a hydrated, yeah, look at that, well hydrated lather. Now, I'm not going to forget, because I soaked this thing quite a bit, up in the core of the knot, there really could be a bunch of hydration. And so I'm going to spend just a couple of seconds here pressing more hard than I usually do, just to make sure that lather gets up in the center and is able to touch that with that water. And that way I don't get that water dumped out on my face during the lathering process. All right, we'll add a little bit more water to my face and off we go. Oh yeah, big difference, guys. It is softer. There was a kind of a wiry feeling, not in a scratchy way at all, but just a way where I could feel the tips and I could feel how many of them hadn't split. This is definitely very different, very soft. It still has a good bit of that backbone at the core, but you can definitely tell the softness has probably tripled. Is this a stable technique? Well, I guess time will tell. And I'll keep reporting in. I'll keep looking at the number of tips. If I start losing track and not being able to find 3 and 4 split tips on this guy, then I think that's something to tell me that it's a destructive method. But we are definitely on the right track here with this guy. This is enjoyable. I could shave with this brush. I'm not getting any scritch at all, but I could shave with this brush every day. And I can tell it's got a little bit more ways to go in terms of the softness. So I think we are free to proceed. I'm going to make a chart. Right now, my borathon, I've got about a dozen boar brushes that I've been raising up kind of at the same level, at the same pace. And they're all at about 24 to 27 uses. Most of them around 25 or 26. And so I'm going to make a chart with all my borathon brushes, and maybe I'll look at the maximum use count on the highest one. Maybe 27 might be it. And then maybe I'll start doing the treatments in there. Like after the 27th use, it gets 3 treatments. And then I'll track which ones I do that with. Maybe I'll make a table and pin it to the wall back there or something. And then we can watch them grow more quickly together, because that whole concept is why I started this accelerator. I realized that with a dozen brushes at 25 uses, they're growing so slowly. I'm never going to get into that magical boar land of ultra softness, or at least it's going to take me so long to do it. All right. Here we go, guys. The medium plate, they call it comfortable. And it's got the brand new Pella / Personna blade. Let's see if it performs like yesterday's Pella blade. No, you can tell this is cutting much better. I can feel the edge slightly. Oh man, it feels so firm. You can hear that there's just no chatter. It's moving through the hair pretty easily. No tugging. Lather's doing a great job of giving me slickness. It's not an effortless move through the hair. There is a little resistance, but it is cutting. It is cutting well, and I believe, yeah, it's cutting efficiently. So good. So at least a brand new Personna type blade. And I have heard reports as I've done my research into these blades how people do have different viewpoints on each of the two main types of blades, the Chinese Schicks and the Personna Pellas. And often a person will say, well, these are sharper, but these are smoother. And so, that's how I make my choice. The lather is just terrific here. Wonderful feeling during the partial rinse there. And I'm glad I did 30 seconds. I'm glad I didn't do any less because, as you can see, we do not have a plethora. We do not have a abundance of lather. But I have plenty to get the job done. Don't have to have a thick opaque lather to get a high performance lather. Cross grain now. Oh yeah, see I've got nice fast movement, and I can also tell it's kind of in cleanup mode. It's not having to move through very much hair at this point at all because it did such a nice job on the first pass. So that's good to know. Something about that first Pella blade, was it because I've had it around for years and somehow the edge degraded? Did it somehow get moved across one of these stays when the injector pushed it through, and so that dulled the edge a little bit and made it so that something about this E-type Schick was the only thing that could handle it well? I don't know. But if you are a person who has the standard injector, they call it the standard single edge, I believe, officially. And this one is kind of the one they issued out for evaluation right before the 1.0 version. There is a 2.0 version out that has been out for years, but in researching the actual name of these base plates for the current version, the 2.0 version, let's be clear about that. It's possible that when they released this one, they did not call them the comfortable head. They may have just used a word like medium. Okay, so I'm not sure about that. It's not like some of these shade companies like to give us a history, All right, pretty comfortable. I do feel like maybe we've got a little bit of tenderness in a couple of areas, but we'll see how that ends up. It's very mild, very light. Get a good rinse here. Just slick goodness here as ultra slickness as I'm rinsing my face. High performing lather. For some people, I definitely added a little too much water, and that's okay. And it is a little bit messy, but for me, it's not too much. It's working really well. It feels great on my face, and it's working great with my razor. You can see how drippy it's being. There are some people where this is how they like their lathers. They like them this wet all the time. Some people like to use this kind of lather with a single edge, a straight razor, especially. They just generally, on average, like wetter lathers than a DE type shaver. So now I believe we're just going to do some touch-ups. Getting the angle right on this razor has seemed to be a pretty easy and natural process. With the small head, it looks like it's easy to get under your nose with this kind of nice, small, slim head design. I think this is a terrific razor. If you want to exclude price, for people coming over from the cartridge, the multi-blade cartridge market, because it kind of behaves kind of like that, and it's very user-friendly, but it's also very effective. And it's not been very good at being out of control, which is a good thing, right? It's not been very good at giving me nicks, and so it's been a kind razor to me, and so I believe it would be that way for most other guys too. And this is just the medium head. so I could go even more comfortable, and I'm definitely going to try that. And there we go. So that's just a terrific shave. I still got that residual slickness. You can even see it on my face right there. Very nice. This is just a championship lather consistency here. The soap here, the soap base, is just championship quality in my eyes. Glastonbury, Port-au-Prince, and was there one more? Texas on Fire is not. I made a mistake a couple of shaves ago. Texas on Fire is not in the Mutton base, but I think there's one more. Other than the two, the Glastonbury and the Port-au-Prince. I think there's one more. The rest of them explicitly have sheep in the terminology, in the word. All right. Varan. Varan is the other one that's available in the sheep. I'm pretty confident that that one is. Okay. What I wanted to tell you, as now I have the end of the third pass here, I'm going to let it sit and see if it dries and leaves me with any, itchiness or tenderness or anything like that, because that'll tell you something about it. I wanted to say that as I was looking up the names of these blades, whether they called them aggressive, medium, or mild, or whatever, I discovered that this model, the 2.0 version of it, is, and it's hard to distinguish between the 1 and the 2, at least in my eyes it seemed to be. They've got a new one coming out, and I think they've named it something very similar but slightly different. I think it's called the Supply SE or something like that. They've discontinued the one that looks like this with the solid bar in favor of something that has more of an open comb look right here. It does have a solid bar going through it, but then it has these fins that kind of make it look more like an open comb. And so the solid bar portion is recessed behind those fins. And so they're saying that it is going to give you this great close cut because of those fins, but it's going to be one that you're protected and safe from irritation. And so it looks like they're putting that's where they're heading. They've abandoned this general concept for the at least the solid bar version, and in favor of this open comb look to it. And it looks like I didn't see any option to keep a solid bar version where you could maybe have the open comb as well as the solid bar. I didn't see that, but who knows? That could be true. I don't know if the plates are interchangeable. Like you could have the old plates and then buy the new razor and have the open comb, but then be able to put the solid bar in the one as well. Visually, it looks like this same design, and so it could be the same plates. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about that just for news purposes. So the Pella did nicely. Happy with that. Happy with that shave. Also, it was a pretty efficient shave as well. Cut nice and close. I did end up with a little bit of tenderness in a couple of spots. I have started to try different approaches at this little area. I've got the curve of my jaw here, and just back from that a little bit is an area where I'm experimenting with some different angles to try to get it closely shaven. I'm not usually bothered with it very much at all, but just for completeness, I'm playing around with that. And it looks like maybe it is possible to give yourself a little bit of razor rash with this one. If you perhaps shave an area, maybe what's going on there's a bump there, and so maybe it was pressed up into the razor, and that made it a little easier to get a little bit of razor rash. I don't see any weepers or anything like that. So I've got a nice comfy face. I do feel like doing a balm today instead of a splash, an alcohol splash. Let's just continue with the Zingari man. The Explorer here has citrus, woods, and vetiver, and I think because it's not a strong balm at all, I think it's going to work nicely. Definitely not going to overwhelm anything. And then it's got nice little skin foody kind of ingredients. It's a well-regarded balm by many. even folks with habitually problematically dry skin. All right, there we go. Heather at Zingari Man is very dedicated. Her focus is on skincare. She is like a certified skincare professional or something, so her products are definitely geared toward that type of concern. All right. Well, we made efficient use of the soap today. So we do not have very much lather left over. Uncommon for me, that's for sure. I enjoyed the scent while I was using it. It was 6 out of 10 in terms of strength, stronger than average, but it was very pleasant and enjoyable. But it is almost a kind of a mono note, or the other notes that are with it are notes that are kind of contributing in the same vein. And so I could easily see having some type of complementary note as the aftershave. Matter of fact, I may let this soak in for a little while and then whip out my whiskey woods as an aftershave, because I bet that that woody booziness would go really well with this soap. And it may carry on a little bit, a few hours, because this is a soap that has a little bit stronger strength, and so it may carry over itself, just the soap scent, longer than your average soap. So I thoroughly enjoyed the base, like I thought I would. Mutton tallow. I enjoyed seeing how the new unused Ted Pella blade, Personna blade, worked in this razor. I did not have to switch gears and switch to a higher plate, as you noticed, at least in one use. It was very enjoyable. Now, what's going to happen? The other one, after 4 or 5 uses, was not enjoyable in this razor. Is that same thing going to happen with this blade as well? Now, I'm curious about that. And so we'll play around with that too. And then there are 3 things I told you I was looking forward to about that. The tips on the Semogue Owners Club were wonderful. At just 10 treatments, I am encouraged, and it lost that wiriness to a great extent. It maybe I could still feel some of the bristles, and so I might actually continue with treatments so that we can get those tips that have split this much already to maybe open up a little bit more, something like that. But very encouraged, and heck, I really couldn't wait to do that. And it was a different brush, noticeably different. Sure was. I'm not saying it was uncomfortable before. I'm not saying it wasn't enjoyable before. That wiriness was there. Not in a, like I said, not in a scritchy way, not in a pokey way at all, but it was like soft tips, but you could just kind of feel them individually almost. This one, they were much softer and they more blended in with each other. It felt like a more cohesive whole, like a badger brush might. And so if that's what happens with this kind of treatment to my boar brushes, uh, I'm just going to full speed ahead put that into my routine. Perhaps one routine might be, and this might be what my friend SpongeBob does. After one use of the brush, you do that treatment, and so between each use, you're doing that treatment, and so it helps it to break in a lot more quickly. I've got an Omega brush around somewhere that I am looking forward to abusing like crazy. Maybe I'll use high heat and all that, because it kind of came as a freebie, and I've already got a couple of other Omega brushes that are going to get kinder treatment. So, as an experiment, just hair dry that sucker, maybe keep it soaking all the time for a week, or, play around with it and just see what happens to it as a brush. Because most of my Omegas are ones that call me to some kind of break-in method, because they are slow to break in a just use it kind of fashion. I will go ahead and say along those lines, if you just have one brush, if you just have a boar brush, or maybe a boar and a badger, then I might encourage you to think about just using it and using that as your break-in technique, because you're going to be able to put more uses on that more quickly than a guy like me who has a ton of brushes to choose from and has a very large rotation. Okay, and so the safest thing is probably just to use it, and you'll enjoy, like many of us do, feeling that brush change over time. And you can kind of get a little relationship with your boar brushes because of that. It's kind of neat. All right, very cool. Good shave today. Good shave on 3 different levels. Learned a lot of nice stuff. All right, well, terrific. I'm going to go and clean out my brush. I'm going to bring it back and show it to you. All right, in fact, as I show you the brush after just being kind of shaken out and rinsed out really well, this is not any different than how it would normally look back before any of the hairdryer treatments. But I think what we'll discover, and since it's, I mean, we're in the 60s in terms of uses with this brush, and so I'm not minding pulling out an occasional hair. I'm not. If that starts to happen at 200, then it's a different story. All right. So I'm going to towel strop it a little bit, and then I'm actually going to pause you guys and do the hairdryer treatment and check in with you briefly as we do it. All right. So this is now how it looks after a good towel stropping. We've removed any of the excess water. You've still got some clumping, of course. A lot of the tips they're formed together, and as we dry it, they'll come apart. So I'll just briefly show you what I'm doing with the dryer, and then I'll pause you and finish it up for a few minutes. So it might get noisy, sorry. That's basically what I'm going to be doing off camera here. You can already see some of those tips starting to get more individualized on the outskirts as they dry more quickly. You might even be able to see more splits develop or come out as they're no longer laying next to each other in the knot. So I'll do it for a few minutes and then come back to you. After just a few minutes of blow drying, you can, I believe, see the difference as it starts to get more cloudy looking, and you probably can make out some more split tips around the edges, especially there. The knot itself, as I work it right here, I'm still feeling some moisture there, so we're not fully dry yet, but it's getting there. It's not far away. As it just took a few minutes of doing this, and as you saw, I slowly would rotate the brush, and then to help with the clumping of the tips, there are still a few that are doing it, I would just strop it up on the towel a couple of times every minute or so. So there we go. Probably not too much difference than what you just saw, but I think in general we're looking at a pretty dry tips now. The core here still has a good bit of moisture in there, and as I'm looking, it's pretty easy to see a good many that have got 4 tips, and there are some that haven't split at all yet, so they've still got a ways to go. But there are lots that are split, and that was going to take a while. I've got some people online who say that Semogues take a very long time to break in, and at first I disagreed with that, because my definition later on I would find out is different. I thought about breaking in terms of being enjoyable and useful to use, because even a Semogue on its first try, often it'll be a lather killer. It'll just kind of soak it up or do something to where it just doesn't make the lather last. Everything looks good maybe in the bowl. You get it to your face and it just kind of dies. Well, for most of my Semogues, between 5 and 15 uses without any break-in mechanism at all, that goes away and it becomes able to make any kind of lather that you want. So that's not too bad. And then and then it was enjoyable after that. It wasn't scritchy or anything. And so that's where I would say it's broken in that sense. But that's not what the other guys were talking about. When they said broken in, they are talking about something more like this with all these split tips. And sure enough, I think it would take a couple hundred uses before you'd start seeing this kind of split result with a Semogue. It's just that from that 5 to 15, once it starts getting nice, from that on, at least it's comfortable and makes good lather. It may not, and then you look forward to it getting just increasingly better each time. I will go ahead and make sure not to forget to say that this is an accelerator break-in that could be destructive. if you have an expensive boar brush, and I guess this one is more expensive than many, because so many of them are really, really quite cheap, $10, $15 for a boar brush, right? And so then why not experiment with potentially what you think might be a good accelerator method especially with the cheaper ones, because if it doesn't work, throw it away, try again next time, either use a different method or no method and just use it. So there we go. That's the progress. Look at the nice big bloom we have. And this is kind of the bloom that you see in many photographs of the Semogue Owners Club when it's had a lot of uses put on it. So I'm encouraged, and that's a little bit about what I'm doing. I hope it's a good long-term solution. I hope I end up keeping a lot of these split tips and not have them break off. Hopefully it's a kind and safe accelerator method. All right. Question I might answer in the future is, can I keep using this Pella blade in this razor? Past 5 uses? That's a question we may want to try to answer. How is the Chinese Schick going to do? Because the Pella that wasn't very good, it worked okay in this guy. All of a sudden, is this an aggressive razor if I were to switch and put that Chinese Schick in here? That's another question we might answer. All right, well, I'm very fragrant right now. As I was moving around, that the aroma of the Glastonbury was definitely present, and it was enjoyable. I can see how somebody might get a little sick of it because it's kind of intense, especially if you followed up with a similar smell splash or aftershave product that had more longevity. But I'm really enjoying it. There we go. All right, best to you guys. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. I hope there's something in this video to help you out in your shaving journey. Take care now.